It appears that several hundred rural U.S. post offices may be saved. Betsy, tell us what's happened here. Seems like the Postal Service is reversing course a bit.
They've backed off their plans that called for closing as many as 3,700 rural post offices, which, as you can imagine, comes to the relief of a lot of rural customers for whom the post office is a link to a lot of the outside world.
Now, a lot of these post offices in these rural areas were slated for closure or consolidation, I believe, as soon as May 15th. This is part of a broader cost-cutting plan by the Postal Service, which is really suffering financially. Help put that in perspective for us.
Well, in terms of the financial state of the post office, it's pretty bad. I mean, that Congress is looking at plans to help the post office save about $20 billion a year in its fiscal first quarter, which is normally the strongest quarter for the post office. They lost $3.3 billion, which is its worst ever loss. So it's bleeding money. There needs to be a plan to save it, but at this point there are competing plans.
Now, in terms of them sort of backtracking a bit and saying, you know what, we've heard a lot of outcry from these rural areas, we're going to keep these post offices open. Do we have any details, Betsy, on whether they'll actually be cutting back hours for these post offices? Will they still be open, 5 days a week and part of the day on Saturday, or will they be rejiggering the hours?
Well, it's sort of all, TBD, but there are several options, that are still being discussed. Now, one thing is that postmasters are being offered early retirement. Another is that certainly in some post offices the hours will be curtailed. They'll be open the hours that they're normally the busiest. Secondly, one of the discussions is about whether to close the actual post office building and move its services to like a gas station or a convenience store or some other. So all of those things are on the table. But the idea is to keep service open.
Now, Betsy, how much did the largest postal union have to do with any of this latest announcement, this latest change? The National Association of Letter Carriers. They've been very outspoken, obviously being against these closures, but also putting forth their own plan, saying the way to fix the Postal Service is not by cutting, but is by raising stamp prices and also by actually expanding the Postal Service's reach.
Right. They want to offer more. Their idea, an interesting one, is to expand delivery and have this vast network deliver more. They certainly have voiced their opinion, but this is really coming more, we think, from Congress. Legislators have been very outspoken. No one wants a post office closed in their district. People are really up in arms about this, and so it's really more about Congress than the union at this point, we think.
And Betsy, just to keep this in perspective, the U.S. does have one of the lowest postal rates in the world. If you look like in Denmark, Australia, they're all higher than we are. I think Denmark is $1.46. So in some ways, raising prices on stamps isn't the most outlandish thing to think about.
No, it's definitely not. It went up recently, and you're right. In several European countries, it's more than $1, the equivalent of $1 to send a letter. So that may be where things are headed.